No matter how many valiant and creative attempts have been made, no one has succeeded in teaching any non-human animals to master language. The most spectacular failures have been in attempts to teach other animals to speak. Alexander Graham Bell tried to teach his dog to speak by training it to growl continuously while he manipulated its jaw and throat. Kate and Catherine Hayes had a bit more success with a chimpanzee named Beaky in the late 1950s. More recently, attempts have been made to teach animals to use sign language or even plastic lexigrams rather than sounds. Because humans are more closely related to other primates than they are to dogs, most of this work has focused on primates. A variety of experiments with chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and orangutans has had mixed and controversial results. Beatrice and Robert Gardner trained a chimpanzee named Washu. Penny Patterson did similar work with a gorilla named Coco. Psychologists at the Yerkes Primate Research Center trained a chimpanzee named Lana. David Premark trained a chimpanzee named Sarah. And lastly, Kanzi, that was trained by Sue Savage. Some of these animals have been able to learn a number of signs. Washu was said to have been able to use up to 150 signs. Coco was said to have been able to use more than 500, and some appear to combine signs in unexpected ways. Kanzi can understand human language and respond using signs and lexigram. Sue Savage found out that bonobos are more gifted than the other monkeys or primates. In all of these cases, however, duality of patterning still appears to remain unreachable. Non-human primates just don't seem to get the idea of isolating and recombining units at one level into new units at a different level, something that humans do with ease and illustrated as by Shin theory and Piglatin, sometimes simply for fun. In general, it remains difficult to prove that animals trained in sign language or in the use of plastic lexigrams are using those signs or lexigrams to do anything other than beg for food, or for trainers to play with them, or for the chance to go outside, or for other kinds of treats and favors. In some cases, it appears that most of their communication is imitative, and intended to please their trainers, rather than initiated for the purpose of conversing. For one thing, it seems that apes and proto-humans must have shared some basic abilities for language, but whatever adoption or breakthrough occurred in proto-humans to allow for duality of patterning does not seem to have happened among other primates, nor has it yet evolved.
Let us now discuss about the stages of language development. At 3-day-old babies are able to recognize or distinguish the voices of their parents, especially their mothers, compared to other people. Babies under 3 to 4 months old start to experiment different sounds like crying. Crying is not really a language but a form of communication. The different cries of a child can be in a different situation. A cry could mean that a child is hungry. Children at 5 to 6 months old begins to learn consonant sounds, vowels, intonation patterns, and they picking up the sounds of phoneme. At the end of their first year, they can now recognize words and naming all the things. At around 18 months, that also called a single word stage, that they use one word as it is a whole sentence. It is also called a hollow phrase. Example, a word toy. They could be saying that he or she wants to play a toy, or she or he has a toy. Under of it is also overgeneralization, that one thing can apply to many, that a single word can related to a bunch of things. Example, a word doggy to mean all the four-legged animals. And at the end of the second year, a child can speak 2 or 3 word sentences and experiment a displacement. A displacement is being able to refer to a past or future time, and also to other locations, that the user of language talk about the things that is not present in the environment. And at the ages of 3 or 5, a child can finally speak whole sentences. This process of learning that a child acquired and learn a language is a way different from animal communication. That is why human language is a unique form of communication. There is some recent research that deaf children use ASL or American Sign Language that challenge the stages of child's development of learning and use of a language. Psychologists in 1980s Linda Acradolo and Susan Godwin had also launched a studies about this area. Earlier than this is Joseph Garcia, who had noticed that children who raised by their deaf parents use sign language to communicate. Garcia in 1986 research project showed that after 6 or 7 months, they are signed in at signs, and 8th to 9th month, they begin to use signs effectively. But Oppenheimer doubted this early language when she observed children interacting with their parents using sign. By this inference, the way we think about learning and acquiring a certain language will possibly change the way we think about the language development. Let's proceed to the theories about language and children. The innatist theory proposed by Noam Chomsky. Innatist perspective shows that our brain is pre-programmed to acquire and learn the language that children do not need or do not have to be taught. Noam Chomsky theorized the LAD or language acquisition device that is hardwired in human brain, that children will develop to learn the language when he or she is exposed to it. The next is behaviorist theory or behaviorist perspective. The learner starts off as a clean state. Example is a tabula rasa, where a behavior is shaped by reinforcement. When a child hears a word on his or her environment repetitively, the more they acquire to speak the language they heard. In behaviorists, the children acquire or learn the language by imitating and by receiving positive feedback. It also tells us that children need to hear language from others, what we call stimulus, to receive praise or positive feedback or positive reinforcement from parents or caretakers. In short, children hear words and imitate those words. And if they are praised for their correct performance, they will do it again and again, just like Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning. The next is theory of cognitivism. This theory is credited by John Piaget. He believed that knowledge is actively constructed by learners, and mental processes are both influenced by internal and external factors. Cognitive learning theory is about understanding how human mind works. It focuses on the idea of information they receive rather than simply responding to stimuli from their environment. The last theory is the theory or active construction of a grammar. This is simply children invent grammar rules themselves, that they have ability to develop rules and that is innate. The main components of this theory would be that children use different speech they hear in their environment to construct by listening, discovering patterns and hypothesizing about the rules that tend to create those patterns, and then they test the rule on their own.
Learning the ethnographies of a language is an effective way to improve your cultural competence, and this is crucial to language learning, as well as developing linguistic skills such as vocabulary pronunciation and grammar. This learning is also focuses on how to interact in the right way or accepted way to be able to understand culture of others. We also need to understand your own local culture, belief, and practices. Let's proceed to the ethnographies of language. Linguistic anthropologist Eleanor Ock and Bambi Schiflin in 1982 pointed out that becoming a competent speaker of a language is complexly wrapped up with being a competent member of a culture. Not only do individuals need to learn the vocabulary and grammar, but also to know how to use that language in an accepted way. Oxenshiflin also pointed out that the task of learning how to use language can be different in different cultures. Let's look at the given complex examples on the book. Infants can be talked to or not, a baby talk can be encouraged by caretakers or not. Americans, for example, tend to encourage a period of baby talk using words such as doggy and horsey and questioning intonations that are not really part of adult speech. Linguistic competency is defined in your speech community, but if you find it hard to learn the second language, you may have difficulty on understanding it. In short, it seems clear from anthropological observations of language learning that humans are not only socialized through language, but also to language.